At the beginning of the second Trump administration, you were promoted again.
That's right. Very soon into the administration, I was selected to be the acting deputy director of the immigration section, overseeing about 100 attorneys and every case that arose in the federal district courts.
But it was the very day of that promotion, Friday, March 14th, that he and others were called to a fateful meeting with Emil Bovee, President Trump's newly appointed number 3 at the Justice Department, who was once Trump's criminal defense attorney.
And we were told at this meeting that over the weekend, the President of the United States would be signing a proclamation invoking something called the Alien Enemies Act. This is a wartime law from 1798, invoked 3 times in the nation's history during the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II.
The Alien Enemies Act allows rapid expulsion from the U.S. of the citizens of enemy nations during a war. But without a declared war, Trump used it against more than 100 Venezuelans that the government said were terrorists. They were to be denied their right to be heard by a judge. Reveni says Bovee expected a challenge.
Bovee emphasized those planes need to take off no matter what. And then after a pause, he also told all in attendance, and if some court should issue an order preventing that, we may have to consider telling that court, you.
And when you heard that, you thought what?
Felt like a bomb had gone off. Here is the number 3 official using expletives to tell career attorneys that we may just have to consider disregarding federal court orders.
In breaking news here on Legal AF, Judge Boesberg, the chief judge in the District of Columbia, is reopening contempt proceedings against the Trump administration that had been originally blocked by an appellate court. Back in April, Judge Boesberg found that in the case involving 200 or more people who were sent without due process to the torture prisons of El Salvador had their due process rights violated. He also found it was more likely than not probable cause existed to find the Trump administration in criminal contempt for having violated the judge's orders to ground the planes to ensure that those people were still within federal jurisdiction to allow for a due process and habeas corpus analysis. When the planes continued to fly over the judge's order that was given orally and then in writing, they just threw up their hands and said, well, they're in El Salvador now. We're not bringing them back. These are the group of people not named Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who was eventually brought back by the Department of Justice after another judge ordered his return along with the United States Supreme Court. This has to do with 200 people not named Abrego Garcia and complying with a federal judge's orders. And when you don't comply, we have a word for that in my business. It's called contempt of court. We had a ruling in the last 24 hours for the D.C. Court of Appeals that said that they're not going to revisit an earlier decision about the judge's order in April. But they cleared the way for the Judge Boesberg, to reopen the hearing, to reopen the evidentiary portion, and to get to the bottom of what happened in March and April. In particular, Judge Boesberg said he wants to hear from a former Department of Justice attorney, Erez Reveni, who, after being fired for telling the truth to a federal judge about Kilmer Abrego Garcia being sent to El Salvador over a court order illegally, he was fired. And in a 26 or 27 page whistleblower complaint that came out after the hearing, Erez Reveni revealed, and he was interviewed by the New York Times, revealed that he, in particular, was told in a meeting with then number 3 in the Department of Justice, Emil Bovee, who's now a Third Circuit Court of Appeals judge, that he should lie to federal judges and not comply with their orders. And Judge Boesberg wants to know more about that as well. Now we got a battle going on between Judge Boesberg and the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice, including its Attorney General Pam Bondi, have posted recently that they said Boesberg is a person who is supporting terrorism because he's blocking Donald Trump and investigating whether Donald Trump violated the Alien Enemies Act, which is at the core of this particular case. In addition to that, that we have a series of MAGA senators now back in session who have decided to file a bar complaint against Judge Boesberg with the chief judge of the D.C. Circuit, Judge Reveni, to try to get him removed. But Chief Judge Boesberg's not going anywhere, and he's now reopened his contempt proceedings. I'm Michael Popok. You're here on Thursday on Legal AF in the morning. Hit the free subscribe button as we continue to grow this pro-democracy channel. We're so close to 1 million subscribers, we can taste it. Thanks for your support there. All right, let's get to this case. Back in March, right after the Trump administration started to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people without due process, they put 200 people on a plane and tried to send them to El Salvador. Lawyers ran into court, including for the American Civil Liberties Union, to convince them not to do that and to not to have the planes fly to avoid federal jurisdiction. Judge Boesberg was the judge. He grounded the planes, or so he thought. He ordered them turned around and returned, and yet the Trump administration ignored those orders and continued to send the people to El Salvador. The judge opened up a proceeding, and back in March, he also ruled that there was likely probable cause to find the Trump administration in criminal contempt for having violated his orders. That went up to a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, 2 Trumpers and 1 not Trump appointed, and they blocked the order against Judge Boesberg. Subsequently, in the last 48 hours, another panel of the D.C. Court of Appeals ruled that while they were not going to revisit the issue, that Judge Boesberg was well within his rights to reopen the case completely and to start gathering evidence, having already found probable cause. What does that mean? That means we're going to have a eventual hearing, and the Boesberg wants to hear from the government about how they plan by Monday, about how they plan to conduct this hearing. He said he wants to hear from Erez Reveni. I'll talk about him in a minute. But here's what the court said in the last 48 hours to allow Judge Boesberg to do his job. The district court has every ability to set a new deadline for production of the information it sought regarding the probable contempt it identified, or to proceed otherwise within its sound discretion. For its part, the government will have the full opportunity at the appropriate time to raise any defenses it may have. If it's dissatisfied with an appealable order the district court may enter, it will have the opportunity to seek review through the ordinary process. That is how our system of justice is designed to work, the 3-judge panel ruled. They also said that the facts the district court recounted presented grave rule of law concerns. Obedience to court orders is vital to the ability of the judiciary to fulfill its constitutionally appointed role. Judicial orders are not suggestions. They are binding commands that the executive branch, no less than any other party, must obey. And they're letting Boesberg, who's now announced in the last 24 hours that he's reopening the case. Now let's examine Erez Reveni for a minute, shall we? Erez Reveni was a longtime member, career prosecutor, nonpartisan within the Department of Justice. He was handling the case at the beginning involving Kilmer Abrego Garcia, the guy who was picked up in Maryland and sent without due process as well, over an order of non-removal to El Salvador he had in his back pocket from a federal judge. Erez Reveni admitted to Judge Zinnes in Maryland, who's handling the case, and she's got a big hearing we're covering later today here on Legal AF with Adam Klasfeld. He admitted, he told the truth. That's what they call a Freudian slip in Washington. He accidentally told the truth. He told Judge Zinnes, as an officer of the court, that Kilmer Abrego Garcia was illegally sent. It wasn't an administrative error. It was done illegally to El Salvador. That was cited by the Supreme Court in ordering his return. And what happened to Erez Reveni for telling the truth, for being an officer of the court, for complying with his ethical duties and those of professional responsibility? He was promptly fired by the Department of Justice. He then became a whistleblower. During the hearing about Emil Bovee, Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, and now on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, he came forward with a 26-page whistleblower complaint in which he said, in sum and substance, as also reported to the New York Times, that he had to come forward because justice demanded it, and that Emil Bovee told him and others in the Immigration Litigation Division of the Department of Justice that when asked by federal judges, they should lie, that they should not admit that people were being sent out of the country in violation of their due process rights, and that if they didn't like it, they could leave. Erez Reveni was fired. Erez, after he was fired for telling the truth, Pam Bondi issued another memo in which she instructed anyone who did not want to follow the lead of the Department of Justice, they should be shown the door and they would be fired for basically telling the truth to federal judges. Now, Judge Boesberg wants to get to the bottom of that with his new hearings. He wants to hear, he says, I'm going to find out what happened on that day. Justice demands that I go forward with this hearing. Now, that's driven MAGA world crazy. Whatever's left of MAGA world after the Epstein scandal. I'm not sure there's much left, but whatever's left is pretty vocal. And they've now called for Judge Boesberg's head on a pike. They want him to be thrown off the bench. They want him to be impeached. And even Pam Bondi, again, leading the most corrupt Department of Justice in history, has gone so far as to ask for, as to call a sitting federal judge somebody who is supporting terrorism in postings at the Department of Justice. Bravo to Judge Boesberg for doing the right thing. We'll continue to follow it right here on Legal AF. Hit the free subscribe button. We'll give you all the details about the next development about Kilmer Abrego Garcia and whether he's going to be sent 3,000 miles away to Liberia or he's going to be granted amnesty, if you will, or political asylum by Judge Zinnes. Big hearing later today. Come back to Legal AF here and on Substack for that reporting. Hit the free subscribe button. Help us cross 1 million subscribers by the holidays. We're so close. We're going to do it with your help. We are the go-to place, the one-stop shopping, the home of all law and politics analysis that you can rely on the internet. And we're glad you're here with us. Until my next report, Michael Popok, who's reporting from all of the Democratic attorneys general and interviews that I'm doing here that you'll be seeing on Legal AF over the weekend. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.